Boxing philosophy is about understanding, in a specific sense, understanding the motion in the ring. And it's about questions. For example, many years ago, Socrates revolutionized understanding simply by asking questions. And we ask questions, but in the boxing context, like, who has the best jab in boxing? Is it Larry Holmes? Is it Lennox Lewis? Who has the best left hook to the body? And who is the best counterpuncher? And who has the best boxing IQ? Because boxing is about psychology, it's about contracts, it's about business, it's about passion, and ultimately it's about understanding the multifarious layers within the boxing context.
Is Chris Eubank Jr. finished? The honest truth. So there's rumors that Chris Eubank Jr. could be returning to the ring. So these are the rumors that are circulating. But let's reflect back before we step forward. So when I think of Chris Eubank Jr., I mainly think of that first Conor fight, which was a great performance. Why was it a great performance? Because there was character, bravery, and perseverance from both warriors, but particularly from Chris Eubank Jr. Bravery, yes, bravery is an important currency in boxing. This is what the general fans love, and he showed so much of that. In a sense, Chris Eubank Jr. fought the promotion, he fought the rehydration clause, he fought Conor Benn, and in the first fight, he won. He made this transition, because, human beings are defined, we're often put in boxes, and he went from being labeled as the bad guy, but then transitioning into the good guy. He was seen as a brand of integrity, a person that spoke the truth. And of course, he was entertaining, great with his words, loquacious, etc. This is what we expect from Eubanks. He also had the ultimate dance partner. You might say, why? How is Conor Benn the ultimate dance partner? He was the ultimate dance partner because their fathers had the rivalry. They inherited the currency of that massive rivalry, which from the British ecosystem or from the British context was absolutely huge. And there's no way to really downplay that. But here's a sad truth. And like I said, we will speak about the alleged comeback. The sad truth is that when we say he, who do we mean? Chris Eubank Jr., he kind of negotiated his demise in the rematch. Why do you say that? Well, him and his team consented to the rehydration clause. Not once, but twice. So who do you blame? Who do you blame for the demise? Do you blame yourself? Do you blame your manager? Do you blame your promoter? Do you blame the team? Do you blame the people around you, the advisors, the people that were in the negotiation meetings? Unfortunately, the more money that was presented put Chris Eubank Jr. in a compromising position. And there's a premise to that. I'm assuming that the more he was willing to compromise with regards to the rehydration, the more money he was paid. And he paid the price for this in the second fight. He paid the price for it in the first fight, but the ultimate effect was seen in the second fight. By the way, that's not to take anything away from Conor Benn, because Conor Benn did some significantly better things in the second fight. Better feints. He utilized an attack to the body. He was more selective in his punches. He showed better ring IQ. So maybe to put it in a more correct manner, there was the rehydration clause element, but there was also the improvements from Conor Benn. Going back to this whole thing, though, about the compromising with the rehydration clause, it's like doing a job that pays well, but you hate it. So you're doing the job because it pays well, but you deeply, deeply dislike it. And it's kind of, to me, I feel like that's kind of similar to the rehydration clause. You're accepting this rehydration that's going to turn boxing, the thing that you love, into something extremely miserable. But because of the financial incentives, you accept it. Was that the right decision? Only he can answer that. Or maybe only time can tell. But I think many people agree that the rehydration clause, it took effect. It had a deep effect. So when we talk about the comeback, there's questions to ask. If you lose your punch resistance, can you get it back? The question before that, did Chris Eubank Jr. lose his punch resistance? Well, he was fighting a fighter, Conor Benn, that was coming up from 2 weight divisions, and he hurt Chris Eubank Jr. He definitely hurt him in round 12 and arguably hurt him in multiple spots in the rematch. So to me, there's evidence that his punch resistance was definitely compromised in the rematch. But can you get it back? Is there some type of nutrition, training, or boxing environment that can get it back? I think the answer to that may be no, but I could be wrong. And this is the rumor that he's coming back, rumor number one, and he's going to step up to super middleweight. Would this be a right move? Would this mean that he's more likely to be able to take the punches? But then will he have the power at super middleweight to be effective? And assuming that, we got the rehydration factor, but are there injuries? I believe that there were injuries. And if there are injuries or were injuries, how does he manage them in the future? How does he enable that the injuries do not reoccur? I think he may have had some hand problems with, it wasn't Liam Smith. Was it Liam Smith? I think there was a fight. I think the trainer was Roy Jones. And there was some discussions about that Chris Eubank Jr. had some hand problems. So is that a reoccurring factor, or was that a one-off situation? Of course, in boxing, hand issues are very prevalent, hand and shoulder issues. And here's another important question, equally important question. Is he still passionate about boxing? Does he still have that passion that he had in his teens or in his or in his early 30s? Is that passion still there? Does he still have that burning desire to be the best, to be a champion? And how could you have that burning desire at this stage of his career, at this stage of his life? And then there's other questions like, who will be his trainer? Because he's gone from Roy Jones to Bomac to Jonathan Banks. He keeps jumping. And would he be able to go back to Brian Bomac? I don't know. Would he be able to go back to Jonathan Banks? I don't know. And who would be the best fit for him? I thought Jonathan Banks did a good job in the Conor Benn fight, but then he left Jonathan Banks. So is that a viable option? And then the other thing would be, who would be the best trainer for him? And will there be a loyalty issue? Looking at Chris Eubank Jr.'s track record, you might think, do I really want to get involved with this fighter because he keeps jumping from one trainer to another? So getting a loyal, consistent trainer would probably be quite significant. So it was alleged that there would be a return in the middle of 2026, but now it's been stated, or there's rumors that will actually be pushed to the end of 2026 as Chris Eubank Jr. is recovering. And I think to myself, what is left of Chris Eubank Jr. as a fighter? What is left? Can he compete as a contender? And can he compete at the highest level at super middleweight? Can he compete at the highest level of super middleweights? Does he still have it in him? And what adjustments would he need to make? Does he need to change his identity? Does he need to throw more jabs, increase his ring IQ? Or does he need to go back to being a pressure fighter? What adjustments does he need to make? And who would be ideal to make those adjustments? And here's another question. What is he coming back for? And I think this is so essential. What is he coming back for? He's a family man now. He's got children. There's different priorities. Now, I think he has the ability to create some interesting fights. I mean, some people would say that Chris Eubank Jr. is a marketing genius. And of course, that's a compliment. And he can definitely stimulate interesting fights in the British ecosystem. But yes, he can create interesting fights, but can he win them? Because those interesting fights he'll be paid handsomely for his labor. But can he win these fights? More money? Well, that's more memories. But what type of memories and at what cost? Like I said, he's a family man, so surely now his priorities are different. And what is his perspective? What matters to him now with regards to boxing? What is important to him? Here's something to consider. When I look at the first fight with Conor Benn, it was like a masterpiece. Hear me out. Men, human beings, are mortal. But perhaps through our work, we can live forever. So for example, if you listen to some music by B.B. King, you can invoke the spirit of B.B. King. If you look at a painting of Picasso, you can evoke that emotion, that spirit, that energy. In a sense, Chris Eubank Jr. left his spirit in the ring in the first Conor Benn fight. And in a sense, that lives in the hearts and the minds of many. I would hope that if Chris Eubank Jr. makes a comeback, that he is able to paint another masterpiece. The truth about Prince Nassim and Brendan Ingle that may not be in the movie. Well, first of all, what is truth? Surely truth is subjective. There's this person's truth, there's that person's truth, and then perhaps there is the truth. from Dominic Ingle's perspective, we're going to look at his truth. I'm always been impressed with Dominic Ingle. I'm the son of Brendan Ingle. I think he's a great trainer, and he does some really good, insightful interviews as well. He has some great dry humor. Check out his interaction with Bomac. That was a great, funny interaction. And as I was watching an interview with Dominic Ingle, he was talking about the Nassim Hamid film, the biopic, I believe it is, and he was talking about the business of boxing. And I believe that the part of the issues between Nassim Hamid, the unfortunate issues between Nassim Hamid and Brendan Ingle, was part of the business. And here's an important part here, and the context is specifically is about Nassim Hamid's brother. But Dominic Ingle makes a point that, people don't generally go to business school. And even if they did go to business school, they don't teach the business of boxing, which is constantly evolving. And that made me think, what is the business of boxing? What is the business of boxing, and how do you become effective in the business of boxing? How do you be good at the business of boxing? Is there like an effective guide on how to be good at the business of boxing, or do you literally just go on the front line and you just figure it out as you go along? Boxing is about people. And as Dominic Ingle states, from most boxers' perspective, and he would know because he's trained many boxers, they look at the money. The money is important. And he explained, specifically with regards to Nassim Hamid's family, that they did not know how to deal with the boxing infrastructure. And when I say the boxing infrastructure, we're not just talking about the boxing business. We're talking about the other stuff, like arranging a camp, sorting out the actual infrastructure that needs to be done before a fight. And perhaps this was where the problems start. Of course, when you talk about money, when people become successful, when people become popular, money is always, always an issue. Going back to the film, Dominic Ingle states that the films were predicated on stories that they told the directors. It's interesting to establish who they are. And those people, I'm assuming that were in the gym at the time that Nassim was in the gym, they told the director hours and hours of stories that were pertaining to Nassim Hamid's fights, to the actual fights, to what happened behind the scenes, etc. And from there, and I think this is interesting, the director chose what he wanted to use, and a lot of it was not used. So in a sense, if you look to like the metaphor of an exhibition, the director was like the curator. He decided I wanted that painting and that painting, but not that one. So the film is like, essentially, it seems to be the perspective of people around Prince Nassim Hamid. So in a sense, you can say that the film has truth, but it may not be Nassim Hamid's truth, because we all look at life and experience life from a different perspective or from a different jungle. We see the same things in different ways. Very rarely do you see a situation and everyone recollects it in the same specific way. So I guess it's about understanding Nassim Hamid, the fighter, but you're understanding him from the perspective of others as opposed to the perspective in his mind. And according to Dominic, the poetic license, so the elaboration on the films, or the elaboration in the film, is the poetic license. The foundation of the poetic license was based on serious truths. And let's remember that dramatization is part of making a film, as truth is often compromised for the purpose of entertainment. Is that right? Is that wrong? At the end of the day, the premise or the intention of the director is to provide an awesome experience on the screen. I think everyone can understand that. I guess it's the way you nurture that truth, and how do you twist it? Do you create a false narrative that makes someone look bad, or do you just create a narrative to make a big situation even bigger? So that to me was an interesting point. And one thing that Dominic Ingle stated was that Brendan, Nassim and Johnny, these were three individuals, and they had a very private relationship. Even people in the gym didn't fully understand that relationship. And Dominic states that his father, Brendan Ingle, he just was so committed to his fighters. He was committed to his people, and he helped lots of people. But when he walks away for good. There's no coming back. I guess it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing. We're all different, and we all have our reasons. One thing that he stated, and I think it's important to remember Brendan Ingle, is that Brendan Ingle gave his fighters confidence. He believed in his boxers, and he gave them that belief. So some boxers may have lacked belief, but in the Brendan Ingle boxing environment, they would gain that belief. And it made me think about the importance of belief and mindset. The importance of belief and mindset to achieve great things you first have to have great confidence. And it seems like Brendan Ingle understood that. And I think that's a great thing. And he must have inspired so many people's lives, not just Prince Nassim Hamed. Clearly he did inspire his life and he took him to the highest of the highs. But he must have inspired so many other people with that mindset. And how important is that mindset? How important is that for society, for individuals, for communities? But now let's get back to this point that's been made time and time again. Why did Nassim have no input in this movie? Why did he have no input in this movie? And was it ethical? Was it a case of the people close to the film just didn't want to collaborate with Nassim Hamed? And is that right? Is it wrong? Is it, why would you not consult, if not the main star, one of the main stars of the film? Because from what I've been told, the film is based around two characters, Nassim Hamed and Brendan Ingle. Obviously, we can't speak to Brendan Ingle, but you can speak to Nassim Hamed. Is it that people thought that Nassim Hamed was too much of a complicated character, or was there just too much history? And I guess there's subjective truths and objective truths, but what may be an objective truth, or what may be very hard to debate, is that Nassim Hamed and Brendan Ingle, they gave so much to boxing. They gave an incredible impact. Nassim Hamed was harvested in the boxing environment that Brendan Ingle created, and he reached such a high. The ring walks, the knockouts, the charisma, the charm. Him being an icon, like a global superstar, he was huge. People don't give him enough credit. And I feel like, boxing is entertainment, but within the framework of entertainment is real life. And in the framework of real life is sadness, it's glory, it's bereavement, it's the laughs when things go well, but then the downs. And everyone's life will have these various chapters. But then it's important to remember how great Nassim Hamed was. But it's also important to remember how great Brendan Ingle was. And also how great the cultural relevance of the Ingle Gym. And I just thought about this recently, today. It's not just the importance of a person, it's the importance of a gym. But why? That's the question. Why is it the importance of the gym if it's not just the individuals? A gym has the ability to change a culture or harvest a culture. It has the ability to change people. And in changing people, it can give them hope. It can give them discipline. It can give them the ingredients, the recipe for success, to be a better person. Even if you don't become a world champion or a British champion or a European champion, if you stepped into that gym and you got discipline, then you were given value. You were given something of value. And that's an amazing thing. And I'm sure that that's still happening because the Ingle Gym is still there. Now, I believe, being run by Dominic. And I think it's important to acknowledge both of these individuals, what they've done individually and collectively, but also being able to acknowledge the power of a boxing gym, of when a boxing gym is done right, when people care enough to try and instill confidence, instill discipline, instill character, instill bravery. This can really change the minds of the people and really change society. And that's an observation that I took from this. Kabayel, the problem that no one is talking about. Actually, that's not correct. It's the problem that not enough people are talking about, or the people with the money and the power. Kabayel recently had a good stoppage, and I spoke about this, and because it was a stoppage and it was 3 rounds, it was an exciting fight. This is good for building the brand. And you have to build the boxing intelligence, you have to build the boxing technique, you have to build the boxing credibility, and you have to build the brand. Here's a question. Did Kabayel get hit too much? I was watching an interview where someone posed this question. Was Kabayel defensively irresponsible? I think in the first round, he definitely was defensively irresponsible. Why? I think Kabayel was really excited in front of the German crowd. Just to establish the context, Kabayel is a German boxer, and he just wanted to give him a great fight. So he was defensively irresponsible in round 1, but he picked up his defensive responsibilities in round 2 and round 3. He definitely can't do that to elite fighters, the round 1 performance, because he would get punished. But the pressure, the bodywork, and the right hand through the target, these were the significant factors that beat his opponent. And there will be better opponents opponents with higher ring IQ, with more power, more speed, etc. And it seems that Cambiel has an ambition. He has a clear ambition. He wants to bring Germany back on the boxing map. And he's developing a significant reputation here as a difficult person to fight, as a difficult person to beat. The resume is significant. He has a good CV. And CVs are important in boxing. It's like when you go for a job, you know, the person with that really good CV, they're going to increase their opportunity of getting the job. In boxing, it can be different because your CV can be too good where people don't want to fight you. And if you don't have the brand to command a lot of money, then people will likely avoid that fight. But what is the best fight? What is the best fight for Cambiel? Well, when we look at the heavyweight, the top of the heavyweights, obviously you have Usyk at the top of the mountain. But now you got names like Fabio Wardley, Daniel Dubois, Hrgović. Don't forget Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, high elite fighter. But let's look at some of those problems that Cambiel may have in facing those fighters. What problems would he have? Well, Wardley, who I believe Roy Jones said is like the British George Foreman. What an amazing compliment he posed. Well, he has incredible power. Check out the viral knockout of Fraser Clark. He has a jab threat. He uses the jab a lot, and fighters that use the jab, they set up the backhand more. He has composure, so even when he's getting beaten up, he does keep his composure, and he's consistently developing his ring IQ. He's a student of the game, so that's what he brings. Daniel Dubois, he is a hard puncher. Who's a harder puncher, him, Fabio Wardley? I'd probably say Fabio Wardley's the harder puncher, but they're both hard punchers. They can both knock you out. He also has championship experience. He has experience at the high level. He has a good jab when he uses it effectively. He does have a good jab, has good combination punching. However, he may be lacking confidence. And he has a lack of continuity in his trainers because he switched trainers again. And then you've got Hrgović, which you have a good jab, maybe one of the best jabs, slightly behind Tyson Fury. Now under Abel Sanchez, he's developing like some good body work. Now he's doubling up his left hook, doubling up his right hands. He has a good 1-2, good movement. However, when we look at the problems with him, he's prone to cuts. And a fighter that puts their head on his chest is going to give him significant problems because there's going to be head clashes. And in the last 3 fights, Hrgović comes out worse. But these would be very challenging fights. Maybe 50-50, 60-40, depending on the opponents. And of course, the Tyson Fury fight, that would be a very difficult fight because Tyson Fury has the reach. He has the ring IQ. That's a difficult fight for Cambiel. And I guess there's the question of, should Usyk be fighting Cambiel? Surely he should be fighting Cambiel to defend the WC title because I believe that Cambiel is number 1 in that, you know, in those rankings. And when we look at Usyk, what do we have? Well, it's all elite, isn't it? It's elite counterpunching, elite IQ, elite movement, southpaw position, so it's unique angles. And now in his last fight, he's shown that he's developing his power. So just when you think he couldn't get any better, he's now developing more power punching. So he's very difficult to deal with. And how would you beat Usyk? Or how would Cambiel beat Usyk? Or what threat does Cambiel bring to Usyk? I guess Cambiel has a lot of strengths. He has punch creativity, punch output, great body work, ring IQ, and also the ability to adjust. He's always adjusting in his fights. Even in his last fight, after that poor first round, he made significant adjustments in round 2 and round 3. And there were subtle adjustments like moving his head, throwing the jab more, throwing that left hook to the body, and then eventually getting the range to throw the right hand through the target. Cambiel makes adjustments and he's able to make adjustments. I'm assuming they must have a very good boxing system over there. And Cambiel needs to keep building on this recent exposure. Like I said, he's being talked about, but he's not being talked about enough. He's known to the boxing fans, but not really to the casual fans. And that's the big thing, isn't it? You need to be talking to the boxing fans and the casual fans, metaphorically speaking. He needs those viral moments. You could argue he would have had partly that viral moment against Zhilei Zhang and Deontay Wilder, but he needs to keep building. Because if he can build the brand successfully, the other boxers will come because the money will come. And that's the thing. People will only take the risk if the financial rewards are there. So Cambiel needs to keep building, keep being mentally strong, keep training. And the promoter's role here is very essential because when you have a dangerous boxer that doesn't yet have that brand down to a T, you have to lure people in with good, slick negotiation. So that means the financial infrastructure needs to be there. the money needs to qualify the risk. There's no point coming to these fighters and saying 50-50 unless their 50% is going to be, you know, in the upper echelons of good money. They're not going to accept it because the risk is significant. And in boxing, you know, undefeated records are like gold. They're like diamonds. Everyone's trying to be undefeated. So I would say that probably Fabio Wardley, Daniel Dubois, they're probably going to try and avoid that fight, or at least be advised to avoid that fight. But there are other fights out there that could build the brand. They may not be as difficult fights. They're still difficult, tough fights, but they could definitely build the brand. The Derek Chisora fight, this would be a good sell in UK or Saudi. Derek Chisora is a big name in Britain, big name in the British ecosystem, and that could be a fight that would gain some attention. Also, the Joe Joyce fight, that would stylistically be a fascinating fight. It would be very sellable. And because of their styles, it would probably be a very exciting fight. Depending on how Caballero approaches that fight will depend on the difficulty of that fight. If he's defensively irresponsible, he gives Joe Joyce a chance. If he's defensively more responsible, this becomes a harder fight for Joe Joyce. And remember, Joe Joyce can adapt. In the Daniel Dubois fight, that's an exhibit, a reference point to Joe Joyce utilizing his jab. So if Joe Joyce was to make the right adjustments, that could be a difficult fight. But it could be a fight of cultural relevance and a fight that can generate a significant amount of cash. But I think it's important that Caballero keeps building himself to the public. Obviously, he's building himself in Germany. From what I've been told, the crowd there was wild. They were so involved. So he's building, you know, he's becoming an icon over there, but it's important for him to become an icon to the world. And if he keeps building that brand, keeps winning his fights, he will get his chance. And hopefully that chance will be sooner rather than later. And I guess the question is how much of a threat is he to Usyk? And I would say he potentially is the biggest threat to Usyk outside of Moses Atama, because many people see Moses Atama as the new rising star. Time will tell. But he is a significant challenge to Usyk. And I think he presents a unique puzzle. The punch output Usyk will struggle with, or potentially could struggle with. The punch creativity. I believe the punch creativity will be difficult. You know, the head, body, head, you know, the variations of the punches and the ability to adapt. That fight will have the potential of being a high elite fight with high elite entertainment. So I think he presents a serious challenge, but he has to still keep excelling, not only in building the brand, but also keep excelling at getting better with his boxing IQ, engaging in mastery, and this could be a great, great fight. So now I want to talk about Caroline Dubois, and she has signed with MVP. This is not latest news. She's been signed with MVP. But what the important thing about this is that Jake Paul, the fought Anthony Joshua, he is behind, I believe, the MVP machine. And this machine has elite marketing, and it has great marketing, and it's behind female boxing. It seemed to take an interest into female boxing. So I think Caroline Dubois connecting herself to the machine of MVP is actually a very good thing. And the female British boxing ecosystem needs to constantly be built. It's so important to have that. And when we talk about the potential, what is the potential? Well, you have the fight with Alicia. That fight has huge marketing potential. I'm not sure if she's in the same weight division as Holly Holmes, but Holly Holmes is a huge cultural icon. And if they are in the same weight division, or if there could be some compromise, that could be potentially a massive fight. But the question becomes, what is the marketability of Caroline Dubois? And what is the marketability of female boxers within this female boxing ecosystem? Now, when we talk about Caroline Dubois specifically, what I do know is that she's trained by Shane McGuigan. And the McGuigan name is powerful. It carries so much credibility. The father was a great fighter, and the son has had good fighters. And, he's developed a name for himself as well. So the father has credibility, and Shane, the son, has credibility. And that means that Caroline Dubois will get good training and will be harvested in a good boxing environment, which is essential. Now, I feel that in female boxing, we just need more narratives. We need to know more about the fighters, because I think when you build a fighter It's not just about the fighting that goes in the ring. It's the marketing. It's the narrative behind the person. The casual fans, they like passion. They like knockouts. They like to know who you are. And so how does female boxing get better? Well, the MVP machine can push the narratives. It can tell the stories. I guess I feel that we need like a modern day Christy Martin. For those that don't know, Christy Martin I think she was called the female Mike Tyson. And the reason for that was because she used to knock everyone out. She was not a great technical boxer, but she was a knockout artist. It was entertaining and people wanted to watch it. And that's what we need in female boxing right now. We need those knockouts. People love the knockouts. It's not just about the boxing fans. It's about the casual fans. It's about getting both of them involved. And that's where the money comes from. And that's where the cultural impact comes from. However, I will concur that I think female boxing has evolved exponentially. I remember watching, I think it was a few weeks ago, the Holly Holmes fight. And again, technically, so much better than the female boxers of yesterday. And when I say the female boxers of yesterday, I'm talking about the female boxers of a decade ago. And it's also good to have fighters like Holly Holmes in boxing because she has that name, ironically, that was, even though she was a legend in boxing, she became a cultural icon when she knocked out Holly Holmes. What a great fight that was. So female boxing is getting better technically, and we're seeing that, and that's a great thing because that's important for credibility, but it needs entertainment. And Clarissa Shields, she's brought entertainment. She's brought the technique. She's got the warrior mindset. She's had great fights, but not the knockouts. But she has brought the great fights, and she's a competitor. She challenges herself, and that's a great thing. And she's in, there's a marketing plan behind her. If you know anything about female boxing, you know who Clarissa Shields is. Every time she has a fight, there's a significant build-up. She came to Britain to have a fight there, and there was build-up there. She's, her name is lodged in various things, whether it's hip-hop, whether it's in the British boxing ecosystem, whether it's in the female American boxing ecosystem. She's definitely there. But I feel like we need a female knockout artist. We need a female knockout artist to capture the casual fans. And if you have the knockouts, the stories, the technicality, the technical brilliance, the technical mastery, and even better, you have a technical, masterful boxer against a knockout artist, and then you've got the narratives of who these people are, that would be fantastic for the sport. And like I said, MVP has done a great job. The Mike Tyson fight with Jake Paul had 16 million people tuning in. So by default, they also watched the female fights that happened on that card, and there were some great fights on that card. So the female fighting ecosystem is building, it's evolving. But I feel like there's still some way to go. And hopefully Caroline Dubois, under the guidance and expertise of Shane McGuigan, can be the one to push that forward from the British perspective. Now, I also want to talk about, I was just thinking about this the other day when I was speaking about Moses Atama and his injury. I believe he had a bicep injury. I think Frank Warren confirmed that. And I think one of the issues with boxing is, and within any sport, there's always issues, but injuries play a significant factor, and injuries are significant in every sport, particularly boxing. So I was just thinking in my mind, you take a name like David Haye, cruiserweight champion, heavyweight champion, and then you think about David Haye and you think about the injuries, the Achilles injury, the back injury, and of course the infamous toe injury against Klitschko. And then you think about Kell Brook. Kell Brook was a great fighter. I really liked watching Kell Brook, but he had that eye socket injury when he stepped up against Triple G. That was such a brave thing for Kell Brook to do because he was a significant dominant force at his weight division, but he took that risk. He rolled the dice, and unfortunately it didn't pay off. It may have paid off handsomely economically, but it didn't pay off because unfortunately it looked like that he sustained a significant injury to his eye, and you could argue that it affected his career in a negative way. And that's not to say that it's a bad decision in hindsight, but if he'd beaten Triple G, then it would have been the correct decision. So it's always, you can't ascertain whether a decision is good, bad, or optimal before things have happened because there's so many variables in boxing and in life. Life is full of variables. But then you think about Anthony Joshua and he had, elbow surgery, knee issues. Then you think about the great Evander Holyfield, the legendary Evander Holyfield. Who remembers those fights with Riddick Bowe? one of the greatest heavyweight trilogies, up there with the Ali Frazier trilogy. But Evander Holyfield, he had a heart condition and he had a reoccurring shoulder injury. I believe he had shoulder surgery. And some say it's just part of the game. It's just part of the game. To me, it reinforces, not that it's just part of the game, it reinforces how hard the boxing game is. And it made me think, where is the risk prevention here? Because surely if boxing is more scientific, because everything's more scientific, why is there not less injuries in boxing? What is happening to the prevention protocols? Boxing is now, it's a scientific approach with strength and conditioning trainers, with, nutritionists. I'm assuming these professionals have qualifications in injury prevention, etc. Why is the evolution of science not decreasing the amount of injuries? And maybe it is, but it doesn't appear to be that way when you look at it from this perspective. And injuries, they mess up careers, they can mess up people's confidence, they can mess up people's life, they can mess up the fighters' money, the trainers' money, the team's money, the money of other people. Think the Moses Atama cancellation, it's not just his fight that's cancelled, it's everyone else's fight that's cancelled. Of course, it's rescheduled, but that means more time in camp and more money has to be spent. It's significant. And it made me think that boxing injuries is not, maybe it's not a science problem, even though it feels like it could be. Maybe it's just a human limits problem. And the problem is that a human anatomy, it has limits. And within boxing, within the boxing infrastructure, within the boxing realm, dimension, or whatever you want to call it, human anatomy has limits. And boxing is so taxing on the human body. And therefore, injuries is a byproduct of being a boxer. Yes, it is part of the game, but what a hard game and what a sacrifice these warriors go through. So yes, can we say many boxers profit financially? Because more boxers have less than more. So it's not like everyone's a millionaire in boxing, but the ones that do reach the top of the mountain from an economic perspective, that's a great thing. But my oh my, do they sacrifice to get there? Because nearly every boxer will suffer some type of injury and will have to make adjustments either to their fight style, or they'll need to make, that they will go through some hard pain, and that pain will be connected to those injuries. And it made me think that, yes, it may be part of the game, but what a hard game, what a brutal game, what a sacrifice. And I think it's important to realize that becoming a fighter, the byproduct of becoming a fighter, is to experience intense pain in a variety of different ways. So this is another thing I want to touch on, and we'll definitely address this again. And this is the concept of, is boxing dying? And I guess when you first address this question, you have to establish, what do we mean when we say is boxing dying? Is it being watched less? Is the technique dying? Is the entertainment dying? Are the pay-per-view numbers less? What do we mean? What is the context? And maybe we'll explore this some other time at greater length, but traditional boxing, I guess you can make a compelling argument, is dying, but overall engagement of boxing is actually improving. So let's prepare the case. How is the overall engagement in boxing improving? Well, if you look at TikTok, if you look at Reels, if you look at YouTube, and you look at the podcasts in boxing, boxing now has a bigger digital ecosystem than it ever had before, particularly on the podcast. Boxing podcasting has become a big thing. People are interested in the fights, but they're also interested in the stories. And when it comes to money, which is a metric, not the only metric, boxing is making more money than ever. And there's great competition. Netflix has now entered the boxing jungle, and they're introducing massive amounts of money. And then you've got the Saudi backing, etc. So, and when we look at boxing, we can almost look at boxing within our own house. What do I mean by that? So you can look at boxing as a British person and judge British boxing as to whether boxing is growing or not. And that's the wrong filter, because boxing isn't just Britain. Boxing is now global. And actually, when you look at boxing, it's growing in multifarious areas. It's growing in the Middle East. It's growing particularly in Japan. It's growing globally. It would actually be wrong to say that British boxing is not growing. But even if British boxing was declining, that doesn't mean boxing as a whole isn't growing, because boxing has a British ecosystem, but it has an American ecosystem. It has a Japanese ecosystem. You know, there's many different parts of the world that are engaging in the sport of boxing on a corporate level. So boxing objectively, I think there is an objective take where you say that boxing is not dying. It's not going away. It's changing. It's evolving. You can make a compelling argument that there's more money in boxing than ever before. And you can make an even more compelling argument that the digital interface of boxing is bigger than ever before, and it's growing exponentially. And that's a good thing. And hopefully in 2026, we'll see more growth in terms of the entertainment, more growth in terms of the mastery, more growth in terms of the safety, and hopefully more people are able to feed their families, and, you know, just more growth in every positive metric. Now, before I go, I want to thank everyone that watched this video. Thank you if you stayed until the end. Also, I want to thank everyone that's watched my latest video on Inouye, and that video is actually done really well. That's one of my analysis videos. And I actually want to do more boxing strategic analysis videos, but they do take up a lot of time and they take up a lot of energy, but people seem to be really receptive to that. Also, thank you to everyone that has subscribed, that has liked, and that has watched the content. And I sincerely mean that. Also, thanks to the comments. I really appreciate the engagement. And I really do try to react to all the comments. With regards to boxing analysis videos, and I want to do more in the future, please give me some names. Tell me who you want to see. Obviously, I like Evander Holyfield, Floyd Mayweather, Oscar De La Hoya, Joe Kozaki, Sugar Ray Leonard, Mike Tyson, Roy Jones. The names goes on and on. But who would you like to see? And like I said, I'm very thankful for anyone who's engaged, who's watched the content, who's pressed the like button, the subscribe button. And I just want to sign out by saying, if you want to support the channel, there's a variety of things that you can do for free. You can like, you can comment, obviously watch the videos, share the videos, subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. All of this helps. And hopefully, you know, we can build this boxing community together. Thank you for your time.